again, if we look in front of that hide again, you guys can see there's a little chair there, or like a bench. That's called a tuka, or a place of honor, and that's where honored guests would have came. We had some honored guests. That the Hadatsas had some honored guests as well that came here, that they could have stayed in place like or sat in a tuka. Lewis and Clark, when they visited, they were visitors here to the Mandan Hadatsas. They spent the winter at Fort Mandan, not far away from here, so they would have visited the Earth Lodges. They probably would have sat there. For sure, Grandpa, we had if Grandpa was living in the Earth Lodge, he would have spent a lot of time in that place of honor, and everybody else would have gathered. Whoever was planning the hunt or planning the war party, they would have sat there and sat around the fire and told their stories. So here's the kind of area where the people would have lived, spent a lot of their time. We showed you the bed where they would have slept. Well, not only the people would have slept in here, but if we look around to this side by the door, you guys can't really see the door, but what you can see is the horse corral. I wonder if anybody here, you don't have to say it right now, but has horses in their house with them. Probably not too many of you. Well, the Hidatsa, they would have brought one or two of their best horses inside with them at night. And I'll tell you why they would have done this, one of the main reasons anyways. The northern plains could be a very violent place. You might have enemies, but one thing that was very important to a man would have been a good horse. That would have made your life as a warrior and a hunter way easier. And the way to protect them would have been to put them inside at night, because that way an enemy wouldn't come and steal your horses. Enemies, or a lot of tribes, the way they would have moved up in society was by getting or stealing horses from the enemies, or getting horses from the enemies. So you wanted to keep an eye on your horse, keep it as close as possible, and that meant bringing one or two of your best horses in with you at night. So the Hidatsa would have lived here at Knife River Indian villages for hundreds of years. They lived here up until the 1830s. In the 1830s, late 1830s, there was a smallpox epidemic. There was some prior to that, but this was a real bad one. In 1837 especially, there was a bad smallpox epidemic. And smallpox is a deadly disease that Europeans brought over. Well, this disease killed many Hidatsa and Mandan. In 1836, an Earth Lodge this size might have 20 people living in it. Well, by 1838, maybe only 4 or 6 of those people are still alive. It killed upwards of 50 to 80% of the Hidatsa and the Mandan. So after living in these villages for hundreds of years, and after this last smallpox epidemic, they just moved on. And they moved up the Missouri River to another village, which is real close to Fort Berthold Reservation. And that's the reservation that the Hidatsa and Mandan and Arikara live on today, Fort Berthold Reservation, which isn't very far from here. And it's the home to the 3 affiliated tribes, and that's the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara. And they live there today. Of course, they don't live in teepees. They live in houses like you and I, or they don't live in Earth Lodges. But there they continue on and talk about their culture and continue with their culture. Here at Knife River Indian Villages, we talk about their culture and how it was when they lived in Earth Lodges, and how it was when they lived along the Missouri River and had gardens. So what we're going to do now is we have about at least 10 more minutes to 9:45, and I'd like to go through to each class and give you guys an opportunity to ask a question or two. And then if we have time after that, we can ask more questions. There's a lot of things in here that you may have saw that I didn't talk about, but I can definitely show you them. There's a lot of things. One thing we didn't talk about, which I'll touch on, is what you talked about, what men do and what women do, but what kids would have done. Kids your age a lot of times would have been busy helping their parents, could have been helping their dad get ready for a buffalo hunt, or help their mom with chores around the house. But games would have been one thing that would have been very important. Leisure time would have been important to the Hidatsa. They would have played games. The boys would have played games like hoop and stick. They have like one pretty simple concept, but you have a stick, like a spear. You have a hoop. One boy throws the hoop in the air, and the other boy throws the stick and tries to get it through. That's a game that the boys would have played. This kind of game, and like many of their games, would have got them ready for what they would have done later in life. Hunt. Be warriors. Girls would have played games as well. They would have had dolls. Just like you can see, here's a doll. So, a doll that they would have had. So girls would have played games like house. So they would have essentially done things that would have got them ready for life. They would have played with dolls, and they would have played house and played with other girls. We talked a little bit too about the Hidatsa and how the women decorated things like hides and blankets with ink, like you saw back there on the parfleche. But they also had other means, like that doll you saw had the beadwork on it. Well, that was one thing the women would have done. They would have beaded, and I think we're all familiar with beads. But another thing that was really interesting that they would have done, I'll try to zoom in on this. You can kind of see there is called quill work. And everything there that you saw with the blue and the gold were porcupine quills. They would have gotten quills off a porcupine. They would have flattened them in their mouth so they're flat, dyed them, and then they would, like a cross stitch, they would have made decorations on their clothes. So that's called quill work. One thing the women would have done. Now, women are always busy with making clothes or decorating clothes or taking care of their children. No shortage of things for them to do, but one thing could have been the quill work. So, but now I want to go around and just get some questions from you guys, so you guys don't miss out on something you wanted to learn about the Hidatsa Earth Lodge. So we had the Missouri School, the Chillowalee. Any questions on anything? Chillowalee. I got it right from Chilhowie.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have on my screen there. I can see braids. A girl with braided hair. Yeah. There you go. What's your question?
Hold on. You forgot about it, did you?
What did you have listed? Come on, quick.
Hurry. Call somebody else for right now. I forgot mine.
How about in the white shirt in the front? It's like a sweater, but yeah. Yep.
What kind of food would they eat?
They would have ate a lot of the things they'd grown, which was the corn, squash, sunflowers, and beans, and they would have supplemented that with berries that they would have found on the prairie in the right time of year, turnips that they would have got, prairie turnips, and of course meat. All types of wild game and bison, which was a real important one, and fish around here too. They would have had fish traps. And one more question for Chilhowie. The green shirt with the yellow letters on it. I can see it right there. There you go.
What if they had a hole in the roof and they had a fire and it started snowing? Couldn't it put out the fire?
Hey, that's a terrific question. There is a hole in the roof, and that's a common question we get. Well, here in the Northern Plains, the Hidatsa also would have had a thing called a bowl boat. It's a round boat. It's about the size of a smoke hole, and they would have used it. They made it out of a buffalo hide, and they would have used it on the river as a boat. Well, when they stored that boat, or if they had an old boat, they would have put that on top of that hole, and they would have blocked out the snow and the rain. So yeah, but good question. They would have had to have something. Otherwise, you're exactly right. So now, if we go to Burlington, Kansas, if we have a question in Burlington, Kansas.
Yeah, put your mic on and say something. That's the question.
Oh, there he is. The mic's on.
What are the
All right, who has a question in Burlington, Kansas?
What are the things behind you on the floor?
There's a lot of different